But this time we're going to use Codeblocks, which is another option within Tinkercad, which is fantastic for building things that contain patterns or repeating elements. So I'm going to produce a turbine, a wind turbine, a propeller, like the one I'm demonstrating here. The idea is we're going to be able to build a wind turbine, something that we can 3D print, but something that maybe could sit in a garden and maybe provide light in an evening. So once the wind blows, it blows across the propeller and it powers a mini sort of generator that enables an LED or a light bulb of some kind to provide light. So this is going to be a device that generates electricity. Let's get started. We're going to create a new code block. Now, if you've used Tinkercad before, you'll know that it all centers around a work plane, very similar to what we've got here. Okay. Within that work plane, we've got the X, Y, and the Z axes in order to build a three-dimensional object. We've also got the basic shapes, which you will find in Tinkercad. But along with that, we've got these code blocks, hence the name code blocks, which is very similar to Scratch or microbits, where we can sort of jigsaw pieces together in order to build sort of repeating or a group of objects. So I'm going to get started, and I'm going to start by creating a new object. So I'm going to use, very similar to Scratch, I'm going to use this object here, and I'm going to create the middle part, the middle cone. So we'll call it middle cone. Okay, I've given it a name, and that name appears at the bottom here as a sort of a variable name. So we could call upon that again if we wanted to later on in the program. I don't think for this particular one I'm going to do that, but generally that's a sort of a great way of doing it. So I'm going to create a new object. I'm going to create one of these things, a paraboloid, like so. And you've got this little arrow across the side here, which determines how big the object will be. Okay, and again, like in Tinkercad, we've got a solid object. We've also got a transparent object, which we can turn into a whole, should we choose to group it with a solid object. So I've created this, I press play, and as you can see there, it's popped it on screen. Sorry, I clicked on whole then. So let's change the colour, we'll change it to white, and it pops it in there. As you can see, it's popped it in, but it's pops it, the exact centre of the object aligns itself with the exact centre where of the work plane where the three axes join. So it sits in the middle. Now, because we're going to 3D print this eventually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build everything above the work plane. I'll try and get them to sit on top of the work plane. So for example, this is a height of 20 for the cone. So if I go move it, let's say, I'm going to click on the move here, and I move this in the z-axis by 10, it should bring it up and put it on top of the work plane, like so. Okay, but I'm going to make it slightly bigger. Just to explain as well, we've got the radius, how big it is from the center to the edge, okay, of the circle it starts with. We've got the height of it, which is 20. We've also got these sides, which might not be obvious because it looks like it's sort of cylindrical or circular across the bottom. It isn't. It's made up of 24 separate sides, but because it's if you zoomed right in, you can probably see that. But if I just was to do something like this and change the size to 4, you'll see it's turned it into sort of a pyramid shape. So it is always based on sides. No matter how big a number you put in here, it will do that as basically in terms of sizes. So we'll just pop that back to 24. Okay, I'm going to make this slightly bigger. I'm going to make it 15, the radius. Okay, I'm going to make the height of it 30. Okay, so basically doubled its size. So with that in mind, if I'm going to double the height, or put the height to 30, I'm going to make this go up in the z-axis 15, and I press play. Okay, it's going to zoom out a little bit so you can see all what's going on. So that's my first object created. I'm going to create a new object and start by making one of the sails. So with that in mind, I'm going to rename this variable and I'm going to call it sail. Okay. I'm then going to add a couple of shapes to make my my blade, my propeller blade, on my sail. I'm going to start off with a pyramid, like so. Make sure it's got 4 sides. And I'm going to scale this. So again, got my tools, objects down here. I'm going to scale this. Because at the moment, set at 111, it's going to do this. And pop it in there, look, again, it's centered it. Okay. I'm going to scale it. I'm going to go 1, leave X as 1. Y I'm going to make really thin, and you'll see like the blade, the width of the blade. So I'm going to do 0.2, and then I'm going to elongate and make longer the it in the z-axis. I can adjust the speed, like so it does it really quickly. And I can also, if I go back to the beginning, I can step through each step of the process. Okay, simply it prompted me there to press the space bar to step. Okay, you can see it moving through down there. At the moment it's facing that way, and I want it to sort of face adjacent to this, sort of sticking out. So I am going to rotate this. Use a rotate key. So I've used move, scale, and rotate in these in the purple sort of jigsaw pieces. I'm going to rotate it around the x-axis, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees. Okay, so it's rotated it, and it's facing that way. Okay. I'm then going to put a round on this top. I'm going to round the edge off. So I'm going to choose the find the rounded roof. I'm going to pop that in. Okay. Again, it will default. It will put it in the underneath. It'll put it in the center, which is no good to us. We're going to need to rotate it and scale it and do various things. So as before, scale this. Pop it in here, and we'll make that 0.2, so it's the same width as the pyramid. And I'm going to rotate. Okay, again around the x-axis, but this time I'm going to go -90. Okay. Probably counts. Oh, you can. So now it's lined up. This edge is lined up with this edge. Well, it's not lined up, but it's in the same sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Same dimension. Okay. So that just is moving now to the end of this, and then I can join it on, almost like an ice cream in an ice cream cone. So let's have a little look at how we do that. I'm going to use a move tool, a little bit like before. I'm going to move this, and this is, again, a little bit of trial and error. If I remember rightly, though, because I have a little go at this before, I'm going to move it 35. Okay, let me just slow that down so you can see that a bit better. Yep, 1, 2, rotate, cone, and pop the cone on top, like so. Okay, so that's on there, like that. I am going to set this to yellow, and I am going to, so I've rotated that around, I'm going to group them together. So I'm going to create a group, cone on top, pop that to the end and group them. Now it's all joined up. This is one piece, okay? So I've got 2 objects, this one and this one. But we're not there yet. What I want to do for this, I am going to round, so I'm going to rotate it slightly. So let me just show you this. Okay, I'm going to rotate it around the y-axis. Okay, but I'm just going to rotate it by 10 degrees. Okay, and I'm going to move it like so, and we're going to move it 20 in the y, and I'm going to move it 3.2. And it just moves it over the center like so. Okay, but what I have done, what you'll notice there, is I've rotated it on a slight angle. I've turned it. Let me just zoom in so you can see that. Now, it's entirely up to you, and we can take this a lot further, and we can take scoops out and do various bits and bobs, but I'm just going to keep this quite simple. The next tutorial we can look at sort of taking scoops out, taking shapes out, or you can have a little go at that yourself, simply by using the hole, so putting objects on top and doing it that way. But the next step, so I've created my little windmill like so. The next step, I'm going to zoom out, is to make this run around this edge. Okay? So, in fact I can show you on another tutorial how I've done the next bit. So, we've got one blade of our propeller, of our fan. So I'm going to create a new object, final object. Okay? This is going to be the pattern. Okay, this determines how many blades we're going to have on our thing. So I'm going to call it sail pattern. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use almost like an if statement. A for loop, rather. I'm going to count with I from 1 to however many by 1, and that will become clear. But what am I going to be counting? Well, I'm going to first of all need to add an object in here. Okay, so I'm going to use a purple section, and I'm going to add a copy of an object. So let me just grab that. Yeah, add a copy of an object. And this object is going to be, and this is where we're using the variables, the sail. Okay? So that's going to add in this copy of the sail. And then, what do we want it to do? Well, we want it to rotate around. I can grab that. We're going to rotate around. This is where we might need to zoom out, but I'll show you that in a second. We're going to rotate around the z-axis, the blue axis, the one that's sticking up, the one that the cone is aligned with. So we're going to rotate around the z-axis, and this is where we're going to do a little bit of fiddling about with the greens, because we're going to use this section first, and that's going to get popped in there. Okay, it might need to come out again. I'm going to rotate using I, count, oh, this is what I'm saying. It doesn't always sit, so if I pop that in there like that, then that could sit in. But we're going to rotate it round. We're going to use multiply in our options. Multiples of 360 divided by whatever number we choose for our sails. So again, I'm going to grab this, and that is going to go inside there. So we've got two joined together. I hope you're all right with this. But this I'm going to use divide. And I'm going to take that number there, 10, pop it in here. And I'm going to divide 360, basically degrees in a circle. I'm going to try and grab all of this and pop it in there. Okay, so all of that goes in there. It's a little bit fiddly, and you might not get that first time, so please persevere with it. And then we've just got to drop this in, so there's not degrees for front pivot, and we're just going to leave all those set at 0. So we've just got to pop that in at the end. So that's the full code there. Okay? So quite a long line, so I've just zoomed out, hopefully you can see that. But now if I play this, okay, and then it will start rotating them around. To a count of 10. So we've got almost like a daisy pattern there. So that is basically my propeller. Okay. Now what I am going to do is I'm just going to make this white, and I'm going to make this white. And at the very end, I'm going to say, once it's done all that, I'm going to say create a group. Okay, so it'll play through. Everything's white, rotating around nice and steadily. Round, round, it puts 10 blades on. You can put as many blades as you want on. I'll show you that briefly in a second. Okay, and then it groups the objects together. Okay, not quite what the little line thing's about, but I'm not too worried about that. Okay, and then just to finish off, what we could do is just pop if I add another object, in fact I'm going to move that out for the time being, okay, but I'm going to create a new object and I'm going to call it, rename it, I'm going to call it whole, okay, just to show you, because we haven't used these yet, I didn't mention it before, so I'm going to add a cylinder up here. Let's see if I can grab it. Come on, there we go. Add the cylinder. I'm going to make this a radius of 2 millimeters. 2. A height of 10. Sorry, a height of 20. And I'm going to turn it into a hole. And let's have a little look at what happens. So press play on this. Okay, and then if I go to the bottom, you can see we've got a spindle in there, a hole, and that's it, and it's sort of sticking in like so. Okay, so I can just move that using the move tool, so we can put it in 20 millimeters, let's say 2 centimeters, and that shouldn't interfere with that, with the height of the cone. So I'm just going to come down to move, and I'm going to move it up into the z-axis. I'm going to move it up 9 and just leave a little bit sticking out at the bottom, just a fraction. Okay, and it pops a spindle in place, like so. So that is basically it. Okay, we can then go on, and if I wanted to, I can export this and I can export it as a part. Yeah, ignore the lines. But I can export it as a part, and then I can bring that part if I wanted to. So I can windmill. And then I can use that to save the part, and I can use that inside Tinkercad. Now that's, let me just rename this as well. So this is latest or example turbine. Okay, click on Tinkercad there and it saves it. Okay, so let's pop that in there. And I open Windmill 2. Okay, what I've done with this one is on this object sale, I've added a third object where I have, this is a hole and I've sort of taken a chunk out. So let me just zoom out so you can see this. It's quite a busy object. And on there I grouped it. I put the hole in the cone at the beginning rather than at the end. Just easy, it makes things easier to group together. So you'll see this in sort of completely finished. This has only got 7 sails, as you can see there. 7 sails at the bottom. So I'll press play on this. Creates the cone. But this time, because I've got this third shape here, which is a hole, I've managed to, almost like a spoon, I've sort of catch the wind a little bit better. And also the spindle is in there and it's all grouped together. Okay, so that is another way of doing it. And just to so you're aware of the of how this works, I'll put that to 9 and that to 9 and press play. If I speed this up, you can see pop, 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 pop. And now I've got 9 sails. So I can put as many as I want in there. But of course, if you go a little bit crazy, say put 15 in, you might find that they tend to overlap. Okay, now whether that would be better, that is up to you to decide. But that's the sort of thing I would like you to have a little go at creating. So you've seen my example. By all means, use the code to get you started. But I'd be really interested to see what you can come up with. Whether it should be rounded edges, whether they should be pointed, whether they should be a different shape altogether. That's up to you in terms of research and your ideas. So I'm going to leave that with you and see what you can come up with. If I'm going to leave that like that. And that is the end of this tutorial. So good luck, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much indeed.